Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. I'm your host, Hiking Bob Falcone. You can find me on my website at hikingbob.com, where I have links to my social media, my columns, past columns at the Colorado Springs Independent, also the previous podcast, my photography website, which if you're looking for a gift for the holiday season, I suggest going over there and checking that out. Humble brag or whatever you want to call it. Check out that kind of stuff. And also you can help support this podcast at Patreon, patreon.com/hiking Bob. And we greatly appreciate that. You could be rewarded depending on your level of patronage. So we appreciate that. Joining me today is my co-host, Wild Westendorf.
Hey everyone, it's Kevin Wild Westendorf here, and you can find me on social media, primarily on Facebook and Instagram at Wild Westendorf, and my website, which is wildwestendorf.wordpress.com.
Is anybody even still on X, formerly known as Twitter, anymore?
It's become a trash site now, so
Yeah. And I've never, I don't want to say I've really cut back on my social media use, especially X, Twitter, and even Threads. I have an account there. I don't use it that much. Pretty much for me, it's Instagram because of photography, and it's Facebook because I can, it's easy for me to post, columns and podcasts and my newsletter and stuff like that. So I've pretty much gone for that. I think that's probably true for a lot of people. I think the debacle over at X has probably helped Facebook, and Facebook being what Facebook is, not always better. But the nice thing about that is you can control who you see and what you'd see. And, anyway, we're not going to make this a big deal. We're not going to make this a big thing about social media. It is what it is. Kevin, tomorrow, day after this comes out, is Thanksgiving. And I always like to take a little bit of time to, you and I talk about what we give thanks for on Thanksgiving Day, especially in the regards of outdoor recreation. So if you don't mind, I'll put you on the spot a little bit. I'll let you start off with what you're thankful for about this time of the year in regards to outdoor recreation and stuff.
Well, the big thing is I'm extremely thankful for the Parks Department with the city and the county too. I feel like in recent years they've really put a lot of focus on acquiring more land and park space than in years past. And I'm not saying they've done a bad job with that, but I just feel like there's been much more of a focus in recent years. I'm really, really excited about I'm trying to remember the name, the new canyon that they acquired land for by Cheyenne Mountain.
Fisher's Canyon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm definitely very, very excited about the quarry work that they have plans for to turn that into what's supposed to be a world-class bike system, or a bike trail system, and land that they've acquired out east, King's Ranch Open Space, I think it's what it's called.
Cane Ranch Open Space is that piece that the county has just east of Fountain.
Yes.
And then the city just bought Wild Horse Ranch, which is over off of Highway 94.
Good, cool. And I just think it's great that they're putting so much focus now on not just trails in the mountains, but trails out east for those folks out there in the suburbs and the surrounding towns. And it's not just for hikers, but for folks on bikes and runners and horses too. I'm thankful to live somewhere where there is a lot of focus on that. And they're taking advantage of the fact that we have all this land that's available, whether it's private or not. They work hard to get those lands for us. I am extremely thankful for that. I'm taking a break right now with hiking because of my health issues. I'm just waiting on some follow-up stuff, but I'm really, really excited to get back out there and check out the new trails that are there now. And I'm really excited to see what will be there once they're done with the quarry and the canyon and such.
Yeah, cool. Anything else you want to be thankful for, or does that pretty much cover it? And that's okay if it does.
Yeah. I'm thankful to be on this podcast. I've been on this podcast for
I wasn't looking, and I wasn't fishing for a compliment. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. No, let's see. I started on this podcast in 2016. So 7 years now. It's over 7 years. And I remember when you approached me about it, it was right after a friend of ours had left the Springs to go live in the LA area. I'm not sure if she wants her name said on here or not, but I'm pretty sure you know who I'm speaking of. But
I do know who.
yeah, and so which is why I so easily remember that it was 2016. But yeah, I've been on his podcast for 7 years now. Almost as long as I've been on my current job too. So it's been a lot of fun to just every week get to talk about this stuff, to talk about the outdoors and hiking and our adventures, to hear where you've gone, to talk about where I've gone. It meant a lot to me, and that's definitely a huge thing that I'm thankful for. And recently I was able to, like, I'd love to brag about Mount Muskoka, because that was the hike you took me on that made me fall in love with hiking way back in 2013. Man, 10 years. And it feels like it was like a year ago. And I remember wanting to bail out on that hike a bunch of times because I was having a miserable time. There was no actual trail, so we had to bushwhack. I know a couple other people did bail out on the hike, like right before the summit, and it's just like, oh no, you were so close. But I'll never forget the feeling I had when I got to the top, and I was just like, wow, it sucked to get up here, but like this is beautiful. And now I do that hike as a quick after work jaunt. It's, I've gotten in better shape and stuff. Um, and but that did lead me to doing a huge hike in the Grand Canyon, to do like huge loops outside of Aspen and Westcliff, hiking in Grand Teton, in the Great Smoky Mountains in Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, hiking up to Mount Whitney in California. I would have never done any of those things if it weren't for you and your guided hikes and stuff. So thank you, Bob. I really, really appreciate that. I'm thankful for you and this show, and I could go on, but I will stop right now.
Well, Kevin, thank you. And I, appreciative of you agreeing to be on the podcast, because I knew that nobody wanted to hear just me, my voice all the time. And it's good to have you on here when we don't have a guest, and your input and your different perspective. You're younger than me and represent a different age group and a different demographic. And it's good to have you on here. So I appreciate that. You're also why we got this award. And you have not seen this award yet, because we have not gotten together. This makes great audio, but I'm showing Kevin our podcast of the year award that we got recently, and that wouldn't happen without you being here, Kevin. So I appreciate that, and the excitement you bring to hiking and outdoor recreation, and you've grown as a hiker. You were a new hiker when I first met you, and hadn't done any, and didn't know the ins and outs and ethics and stuff like that. And you've become a good example of being a good hiker. So I do appreciate that. I appreciate, as you said, all the parks departments, and you talked about the Fishers Canyon acquisition and the Pikeview Quarry and the Blodgett Open Space. I've been part of that as a volunteer. And I appreciate the volunteers out there and the friends groups, the groups that are out there cleaning up these parks and open spaces and building trails and just all the work they do and the advocacy. And sometimes they're just there to raise money so that these parks departments, which are always low on the totem pole for funding, get their funding so they can, help them do stuff, and especially with a growing population. I appreciate that. And I'm thankful for those people, those volunteers, and the people who work in the parks departments, which are, like I said, traditionally underfunded and understaffed. And they've made great strides. I think some of our community leaders have realized that they need to better support our park systems, because outdoor recreation is a major contributor to our economy and our way of life, and it's why a lot of people, including myself, live here. So that's important. So I'm thankful for those folks, and I'm thankful to the good, responsible users of our parks and trails who don't trash things and respect nature and respect the work that everybody does out there, and keeps these trails and parks a nice place to visit and act responsibly. I appreciate all those folks. And I even appreciate the people who I disagree with a lot, because when they disagree with me or they present an argument that I think might be wrong or something, it forced me to go back and do my research, make sure I'm right. Or I shouldn't say right, make sure I have my facts straight. I may not always be right, but I want to make sure I have my facts straight. So I even appreciate the people who disagree with me a lot, because sometimes it reminds me that I need to go back and just make sure I haven't twisted the facts in my mind or something like that. And sometimes those folks who disagree with me, and oftentimes they have valid arguments and or valid complaints, and sometimes we need to address those. So I even thankful for the people who I'm not always in line with, but who are no less passionate than everybody else is. And you know, you need to hear from all these voices. And last, of course, I'm thankful for my wife who does not groan and complain every time I head out for another hike or another meeting or to meet somebody else or record another podcast or do whatever it is I'm going to do. And she definitely lets me take all these trips where I go to all of these far-flung places. I better say that right. And go to all these places. So I'm appreciative of that. And none of us could do this without the support of our families. So whether they be our close families or extended families, we couldn't do that without their support. And all these people support this podcast and listen to it and have read my columns at the paper and all that stuff. I'm appreciative of all these people. It is a big, huge community that, you know, we are lucky to have here. I gave the really long answer to what should have been probably a pretty easy short question, but that's the people I am appreciative of and thankful for on this holidays. Thanks to all of these people who make this a success and make being an outdoor enthusiast in this area a success. And Kevin, you've been here since the beginning. And this will be episode number 381, and you've probably been on probably 300 of those. So the I shouldn't say odd, but the occasional interview or one that I may do on my own if I'm traveling, but you've been a part of all this since the beginning. And I was so glad that you accepted my invitation to be on this podcast. I know you were hesitant to do it, but you've helped make this a better podcast. So thank you, Kevin, for being here and being a good ambassador for not only the podcast, but good, responsible outdoor recreational use.
Thank you, Bob. I really, really appreciate that.
Kevin, you mentioned just briefly your health issues. And I want to thank the community because people who heard that podcast have contacted me, and I forwarded you an email I got from one person about similar issues they've had and what they thought might be behind it. And Kevin, if you've seen that, and maybe you can take that to your doctor and ask them what they think of that. It's good to hear from the community that they're paying attention and they express some concern over your health issues, which I hope you're getting on the better side of, and you know, and see what's going on there. But you know, it's great that we have this community out there that helps be supportive of us, and we try to be supportive of them. If you ever, and we've said this before, if you have a question, a comment, a topic you want covered, email us and let us know. Either you can email Kevin or you can email me, and just go to our website and we have links there where you can contact us. So feel free to do that. Do you have any other update on your health thing, or are you just waiting to see from the doctors how you know what's going on?
Right now, I'm just waiting to see on the doctor. I have an appointment on Monday of this week, so I'm hoping to get some more information and updates. I feel fine. The two meds that I'm on right now are doing their job as far as I know. Adjusting to them was weird though. The first few days, like just lack of sleep. And one of them is a side effect that I've never experienced in the past, which is best I can describe it is you kind of get this out of body experience sometimes, where everything around you becomes very stimulating. So like sounds will kind of become too much, the visuals be too much. So I like if I was playing a podcast or music, I would have to pause that and just kind of stop for like a few minutes, and then it would kind of like bring me back down. It was really, really weird. So I'm not experiencing that anymore, thank goodness, because it was definitely very, very overwhelming and weird. So I think I got used to it, so I'm fine now. Thankfully, that medication, it should be done with by Monday. That's good. The other medication that I'm on seems to be fine. So yeah, just waiting until after my appointment on Monday to find out what's next.
Well, good. I'm glad that medication's working for you and you're feeling good. And you're not any repeats of that incident you had, you know, last weekend.
Yeah.
The weekend before, you know, before this airs. But I'm glad that's working out for you. You know, that's the scary thing about high blood pressure is that you don't typically have, unless it gets way out of control, you typically don't have any symptoms. And meanwhile, it can be doing all kind of damage to your system. So high blood pressure especially is kind of scary in that regard. You just don't know you've got it until things get a little too late. So I'm glad you're on the med.
So what's scary is that what I've learned is it's known as a silent killer. Yeah, because that's as you said, a lot of people will have it for years and just not know, and then it leads to a lot of damage. So I'm glad that I know now, rather than when I'm 45 or 55, and then it leads to an actual heart attack or heart failure. Just a bunch of nasty stuff that can happen as a result of it.
Or when you get to be really old like me.
Bob,
Uh,
you're like 45 is fine.
I wish. Thank you for that. Well, no, you're doing the right thing, and I'm glad you're getting it, and getting a hold of this early and taking it seriously and not blowing it off, which a lot of people do. So good for you on doing that. I am trying to get to my 800 miles of hiking in a year, and as of the time we're recording this, I need 120 miles between now and the end of the year. So I've been putting on the pressure, trying to get out and do 3, 4, 5, 6 miles a day, and getting that. I think I'm gonna hit the 800 miles as long as I don't hurt myself, and that's probably why I'm behind a little bit this year, is because I've had some injuries during the course of the year. But I have, in the last 2 weeks, have purchased several new pairs of boots, because as I looked at my old boots, they felt comfortable, but when I looked at the tread and stuff, they were worn. They weren't worn evenly, and probably was contributing to pain I was having in my feet and legs. So I'm purchased several new pairs of boots. They're fitting me well and they're supporting me. So happy that REI just had a big sale and I was able to get some stuff pretty I should say inexpensively, but less expensive than they were before. Even the boots I just wore casually around were pretty worn out. And I noticed that when I wore those, I felt worse than in my actual hiking boots. So it was pretty interesting how that worked out. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Better luck next year. Hopefully I don't have any injuries next year. I've got some trips I want to do and places I want to be and hikes I want to do. So I don't want to be injured. Getting old sucks, Kevin. Don't get this old. No, get this old. Just be healthier than me. Kevin, talking about people being outside and being responsible users, there was an incident that happened last week in Summit County, which is, for people who aren't familiar, about 100 miles west of here in Colorado Springs, where a hiker had gone up to do a 13-ish thousand-foot peak and ended up having to get rescued. And can we guess why they had to get rescued, Kevin?
Because they were not prepared.
Bingo. Kevin wins the hiker rescue bingo. Unprepared. They went on this hike with less than adequate shoes, and they were wearing a fleece sweatshirt. Now, of course, the fleece sweatshirt sounds like a great idea. It certainly is warm enough, but what's the problem with wearing fleece as your outer layer is they're typically made of cotton. What's wrong with cotton is that when it gets wet, you're in deep doo-doo. There's a reason why in this industry we say cotton kills. So what ends up happening is this hiker goes up on this 13,000-foot peak, ends up getting snowed on because it's snowing at these high peaks at this time of the year. We may not see it down here at 6,000 or 7,000 feet, but up at 12, 13, 14,000 feet, they're getting snow. Gets snowed on, doesn't have right footwear, and has cotton fleece, which, as we know, gets soaked, sticks to your body, freezes you. You end up being hypothermic. It also loses insulating quality, so it doesn't insulate anymore. So this person ended up being part of a pretty large search and rescue operation, including a helicopter, and ended up having to get rescued off this peak. And we're here to educate, and one of the things we want to remind people is this is a learning experience. So what did this person do wrong? Well, the fleece was a good idea for keeping warm, not a great idea for staying dry. So if you're going to wear fleece, which I have fleece, bring a shell to wear over it so that if it starts to rain or snow, you can keep the water off of it. Don't forget to wear a wicking layer under everything, which I always have one. Yeah. Always wear a wicking layer under it. If your footwear should be not sneakers, should be boots or shoes that are suitable for it. And in this weather, when it's going to snow, probably needs to be waterproof or very least water resistant or breathable footwear. If you're going to be in snow, it definitely needs to be absolutely waterproof. Even Gore-Tex stuff doesn't work when you're going to be trotting through the snow constantly. It's not designed for that kind of stuff. And be prepared for that kind of situation so you don't have to be rescued. This was posted online, and of course, people who were not from Colorado were talking about how much this was going to cost this person, and they were going to bill them tens of thousands of dollars. And I had to correct a number of people that we don't bill for rescues here in Colorado. You know, if there's an EMS transport at the end, you have to pay for that, but that's separate from search and rescue, and not all rescues require an EMS transport. And somebody kept insisting I was wrong, and I'm like, I'm not wrong, and you're not from Colorado, so you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
In my work as a journalist, I've talked to lots of search and rescue people, including on this podcast, and we've talked about that. But nonetheless, that doesn't mean there aren't tremendous costs involved with that stuff. So I'm going to move over to one more thing. If you're going to go hike in a state wildlife area in Colorado, you need to get a fishing license or hunting license. Part of that is a fee to go to the search and rescue fund, or you can buy a Colorado search and rescue card that also goes into a fund that helps fund search and rescue operations. So make sure you do that and help support those all volunteer teams in Colorado, and they do not charge for their rescues. Even though Kevin and I have had said there's some situations where they probably should, they don't, and that's a good thing. I know some states like Arizona, they do, especially if you're found to be like this person, not properly equipped or planning or prepared. They will probably bill you for search and rescue, but here in Colorado, we don't. So, and that's not a green light for you to just go out and be willy-nilly and say, well, I don't have to pay for it, so I'm going to just go out there and do whatever I want. That's not a good thing, because you could be taking away resources from somebody who's in worse shape than you. Kevin, you and I have a famous experience, and you know what? That was 4 years ago when we did our hike down Pikes Peak from Elk Park.
Oh, 4 years.
I just came across the pictures just yesterday, where we encountered people who were trying to go up there to climb Pikes Peak without equipment and not knowing that the weather was bad. And people probably, as a matter of fact, they closed the highway right after we started that hike, and not being prepared and want to do it. Fortunately, they finally came to their senses and turned around. But we've encountered those people. We see them every day, and our people in our parks who we're appreciative of see these people every day. So don't be one of those people. Be somebody who's prepared. If you have a question, ask somebody at a park. Ask people at our city, county parks, our state parks. They'll give you good advice. Email me or Kevin. I do get emails a lot from people wanting to know about hiking a certain trail. We'll be glad to give you information. We may end up sounding like we're trying to talk you out of it, but we're probably just trying to talk you out of it until you're better prepared, or maybe have a better time to go, better equipment. I certainly don't want to dissuade people from doing their dream, but I may tell you that this is not the time of the year, or you don't have the equipment, and maybe a different time of the year or better equipment is the time to do it. So, Kevin, your thoughts? We have a couple of minutes left here, but your thoughts on that?
I'm on the same page as you, and actually on Reddit, the daughter of the guy who had to be rescued was on there, talking about her dad and how he is a big athlete, he's a big time runner and mountain biker, and there was discussion about he may not have been in the right state of mind when he did that hike. So that's something to consider if you have a relative who's older who might be dealing with certain issues with stuff like that. I don't want to put out any terms. Yeah, there were concerns from her that he was not in the right state of mind, which might have led to why he made such an irresponsible choice to do a hike like that with the clothes that he had. So that's another thing to be aware of and to focus on in case if you're going through something, or if you have a relative who might do something like this. Obviously, you can't control every step or act of your friends and family, but that's something I never thought about, that like, oh yeah, sometimes people might make these choices because they're just not in the right state of mind to do so. But going back to the hikers that we dealt with, I will never forget the fact that one of them was wearing what looked like dress shoes to hike up Pikes Peak. I was so glad that they made it to bar camp and decided like, okay, we're going to turn back. I still felt like they should have listened to us in the beginning, because one of them was not doing well at all until they started to go back down. But Yeah, you need to do your research and listen to your body. You need to do more due diligence beyond just, I want to hike that mountain.
I was doing I was right dance behind
Yeah,
him at
yeah.
bar camp when the bar camp people said, go back down. You can't go further up. At that day, the wind at the top of Pikes Peak was roaring like 60, 70
Oh,
miles an hour, which is why they closed the
yeah.
road. There's no way anybody was going to get there to get him, and everything was closed. In any case, yeah, mental health is a big thing, and we probably should talk a little bit more about that. I've had psychologists on here talking about it, but your mental health is just as important as your physical health. And I'm hoping that that person's family, and like I said, we're not demeaning them, just trying to give people good advice.
Yeah.
That I hope that they get him the help that he needs, and keep an eye on him and make sure that he doesn't put himself at danger, at risk in the future. That's just as important, and a lot of unfortunate things. And let's not forget, anything can happen to anybody. Even the most well-equipped hikers have had accidents by slipping on rocks, being subject to avalanches, all these kind of things. They can happen to anybody. So just remember that too, that we talk a lot about the things people do when they're not prepared properly, but sometimes things happen to the most well-prepared people. It is a rough environment out there, especially above tree line, and anything can happen to anybody. So just be careful out there, folks. One of the things I want to be thankful for is all of you stay alive during the year while you're out there hiking. I think that's kind of important.
Yeah, yeah.
Want everybody to stay alive out there. Kevin, I think I've kind of covered everything. I just wanted to talk about that one incident on the magazine that ran it on their page. They were making a big deal about it, and I'm like, this is what we call Thursday in Colorado. But every once in a while,
Yeah.
those things make the national news, but it's not that unusual here, unfortunately. And with that, Kevin, I think we need to wrap up. It looks like we're running out of time. You got anything else you want to say before we go?
No, I think I'm good. I'm just excited for any updates next week for like hikes that I'm getting back out to and so on and so forth.
Okay. Well, Kevin, thank you for being on the podcast, and thank everybody out there for listening to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. And we will talk to you next time, and have a great Thanksgiving holiday
Yeah.
with your friends and family. Thanks, everybody.
All right, we'll talk to you later.